And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 5, episode 4. And this is certainly a special episode of the QCast. You know, I've had coaches on here, I've had players, administrators, committee members, other random people. I've never had what I'll call like an international man of mystery. And that's what we have here today in my very good friend Akiva Poppers, a Yeshiva 2022 grad and a man that wears many hats at Yeshiva in the world in general. Akiva, this is overdue, and it's so good to have you on. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Bob. I'm busy and tired.
You,
That
I
that
could,
just sums it up.
I could tell you're busy because this was a very hard QCast to schedule. You know, usually some of the top coaches in the country are like, yeah, Bob, tell me when to be on. I'll be on. Uh, Akiva was very specific. And then today, when came time to record, he sent me a note. He's like, I'm going to be like 6 more minutes. So, Akiva, tell us what has you so busy? It's a combination of things in your life? Like, let us help you on this. What's got you so busy?
Yeah, I just do a lot of things. I have a full-time job, which is remote, so that enables me to be able to do a lot of other things just because there's no travel time involved. And there's a good amount of flexibility. I have a great manager. And so that's a big part of things for me, that the full-time job being remote. And then besides for that, then it's just a whole bunch of things. There's the yeshiva stuff, which is all advisory. It's not paid. It's not significant, but it's
Right.
stuff which I do on the side. I'm coaching JV basketball at a local Jewish high school this year. So that's taking up a lot of my time now because we're in kind of like the preseason, doing a lot of work to put our players in the best position to succeed once the season starts, which is going to be at the end of this month. Um, I also on the side do some stuff for a small Jewish sports media company, um, in a lesser capacity this year than last year, just because I was too busy otherwise. And then I have life things going on as well. Just a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just so this day job you've got, I mean, on paper, it sounds impressive. I mean, data migration engineer. So that's your title. That seems like a big deal. And you're the JV boys basketball coach of a ninth, 10th grade situation at the Ramaz School in New York,
Yeah.
right? In the city.
Yep.
That's in the Yeshiva League. And you mentioned your role with Yeshiva men's basketball, which isn't necessarily formal. I don't know if that's the right word, but you help with a lot of stuff, including you were very visible this year getting involved in some scheduling stuff. Is that correct? I mean, I feel like you're
Yeah, I'd say
brokering some deals.
that's probably the primary thing that I'm doing right now, is helping Elliot with the non-conference scheduling. Just because at this point I do have a good number of connections, as well as obviously knowledge about the D3 landscape, and I'm able to assist in looking a year or two in advance and trying to find opponents who make sense for us based on what we're trying to do. So for this year, just as an example, first 2 games this season, Mount Union and Worcester. Elliot said, "Hey, I want to do a trip to Cleveland, because there's a big Jewish community there." I said, "Great, let me go and contact all the Cleveland area teams." And then so we actually had multiple offers which were there. Um, and then it's like, okay, let's figure out the best thing to do, which in this case we did 2 single games instead of a tournament, just because, I mean, let's do the best thing for the team, right? So even though there's a tournament structure possible at Case Western, um, we wanted to play Mount Union and Worcester. Those are two big blue bloods, rather than, let's say, just getting Case Western in there and then
Right.
whoever the team would have been. And then also the Trinity game that we have on December 1st. I told Elliot in November that Trinity was good and that we should get them in there before it was too late. And so we got that done. Um, I know there was some people weren't so sure about Trinity, but we were pretty sure early on that they were good, so we got them in.
I
Um,
warmed up to him. I got there eventually. At the end, I was right.
that's
I
true. That's
mean,
true.
it took
That's
me a
true.
little while, but I admit it. I was slow on the take at Trinity, and there they were in the Final Four, and I had to say they're pretty good. Now, let me ask you this, Akiva. So, with scheduling, that's a good place to start here. Is when we first met years ago, just on Twitter and things, talking about hoops. At that point, Yeshiva was having a very hard time getting games, and now every year I look at the schedule, and the non-conference schedule is incredible.
Yeah.
And you've got just this this awesome rotation of great programs that the Macs are playing. What's changed from 5 years ago to now your ability to go find a game against Mount Union and Worcester?
So I wasn't involved actually at all 5 years ago. But I can only go based on what I'm told, which I have no reason to not believe. Um, in the NESCAC, the only team which was willing to play Yeshiva pre 2018 was Williams. And Yeshiva did, I don't remember if it was a 3 or a 4 year deal with them, just a group of home and homes. Um, and that was it. I know Amherst was a school which Elliot had tried to get multiple times. Obviously, a different coach now, and now Elliot's been able to get Amherst in there, but Amherst wasn't interested. I know Elliot had tried teams in the Centennial Conference were not interested. I know he had tried some teams in the NJAC and was able to get some teams in the NJAC, but not necessarily the best of the best. Ramapo was in there at one point, but then they weren't interested in doing it again. And I think the biggest reason why, if I were to, again, this is just a guess because I wasn't heavily involved as to what other schools' thinking was, is that it wasn't really beneficial to play Yeshiva. It doesn't make any sense. They're at that point a good team but not a great team in a bad conference. And there just wasn't, in terms of the way that the tournament is set up, a benefit to playing Yeshiva. What I think part of things that have helped in the time that I've been involved, even before I was hands-on with the scheduling, but just knowing what was going on, is that it's become sort of a thing. So we have some teams which are reaching out to us, but then also there's been this just kind of general understanding created in the D3 world, and I think you've been a part of this, to the beneficial side of it, that even it doesn't matter really how good the conference is, just play the best teams that you can.
Right.
I think a third piece of it is there's kind of there's a test which you get with Yeshiva which you don't necessarily get with other teams, just because of the uniqueness stylistically, offensively.
Sure.
And I think that's very beneficial. Some teams see that as very beneficial to face that, because they don't necessarily see that
Right.
in their regular conference play, and so that can help prepare them for the tournament. Obviously, in the past few years, Yeshiva's had their issues defensively, and so they've, let's say, struggled to win some games, even though they've been able to do well offensively. So let's say, for example, last year in the Hope game, right, neither team could stop the other.
Right.
And obviously, Hope ended up winning by a few points. But I mean, that was a very Hope was talking afterwards, like a very beneficial game for them to play. Even though in their league, they had a team which plays probably about as similar as you're going to get in D3 to Yeshiva, which is Trine, stylistically, but still, it's just a very beneficial game for them to play just because it's kind of unique as to what they have to prepare. So I think that's definitely helped with it too. And the last thing has been, now we're kind of going out and targeting schools which we might not have targeted before.
Right.
So let's say Mount Union or Worcester. I'm sure Mount Union or Worcester could have potentially been interested in playing Yeshiva several years ago. It just never reached out to them and said, "Hey, let's play." Or even like a Trinity, never been so bold, let's say, to have contacted a Trinity in November. Hey, do you want to play us? So I think that is a certain aspect to it too, of just putting yourself out there. What are the teams we want to play, based on who we think is going to be good, and like, hey, can you play us? I will say the last piece of that is, and I was talking with Elliot about this. I think it is helpful, and we've kind of seen this, to have someone contacting you who you know, which is why I'm able to help a lot. Because when you just have an athletic director or someone in the athletic department email you, hey, we want to play you, you have 20 other emails like that too, right? But if you get a Twitter DM from into the coach's inbox saying, hey, we want to play you, and the coach already follows that person who's sending it to them, that it definitely increases the chances of getting a response. So that's been the last element, I think, which is why I'm, if I wasn't able to provide benefit, I wouldn't do it. But I'm definitely able to provide benefit just because some people know who I am, right? A lot of these coaches of the teams that were playing already knew who I was before I messaged them.
Yeah, if anyone doesn't know what we're talking about, pull up Yeshiva's schedule this year and check it out. It's great, like it was last year, like it'll be next year. And that's been cool to see, because I remember that being the big topic, is like no one will play us. And so that's why people didn't have any understanding of like, is this team that's winning all these games, are they great or are they just good?
Yeah.
And so it's been awesome to see the schedule. I want to talk to you about the upcoming season for your Max, because this has potential to be a really big one. Now, last year, Yeshiva was 16-12, 11-5 in the league. And, a lot of times we say, well, that team returns everybody. And it's not really literally true. I think it's literally true. I think did everyone that played last year, essentially, Akiva, is everyone returning for this year? I don't know of any huge losses, or walk me through that.
There are a couple of guys who were on the team who played some last year who aren't back this year. Adi Markovic, the
Yeah.
the former IDF soldier, 27-year-old veteran captain, who's actually in a coaching role now. He's on the bench. And then Gav Landau, who was the other captain. I don't think either was considered a big name, right? You don't write down either as a huge loss, but there's some element there. Like they both contributed to the team.
But then that means that the guys that are returning, and check me on this, Zevi Samet, 23 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. We'll talk about him. Max Zakheim, 19-5-3. Or Sanjevsky, 16-5-2. Dotan Bardachev. Now, like, I hope I'm pronouncing these right. I think I'm getting close. Dotan Bardachev.
You're 100% right now, 100% right.
11-7-4. And Roy Itkovich. Did I get those?
There you go. You've been watching too much Max.
Yeah, that's a bad sign that I just rifled through those. 9-4-2. There's other guys, but I wrote down those 5. So Akiva, like, that is a serious nucleus of guys. And then all of those I just listed, not only do they return this year, but they have eligibility that extends to the next year. You can never say they're definitely returning, because who knows? Right. But talk to me about the kind of, as a fan, your thoughts going into this season with those returners.
Yeah, I'd say firstly that's the number one key when we're looking at Yeshiva's returners. It's that you take out a Demarkovich and Gav Landau. You have 95% plus of the scoring from last year returning with 2 or more years of eligibility. Right. Obviously, in the Yeshiva locker room, they're not looking forward to 2025, 2026. They're looking at 2024, 2025. And I think there is an element here of the first year of all these guys being together was really good. Last year was a little bit disappointing. I know there were a lot of injuries, but the team had higher expectations than just losing in the conference championship, albeit to a very good Farmingdale team. But now there's kind of a sense of now let's get it done, right? There's no more like, oh, we're young, right? First, in the freshman year, absolutely, it was like, we're young, we're going to make mistakes. The sophomore year, there's still going to be some learning. There are going to be some bumps here and there, but let's try to get there. Once you're all juniors, the time is the time. You can't just keep using the same excuses of, hey, we're young, we're still figuring things out. So there's that. Another thing is that there are a couple of transfers.
Yeah.
Who are D1 walk-ons, the Cronin brothers, who are expected to contribute. in some fashion. I don't know if they're going to start. I don't think Elliot's decided this already on October 1st anyways. I don't know if they're going to start or if they're going to come off the bench, but I would expect both to receive minutes, meaning they should both be in the rotation. So there's that piece too. And I mean, just a quick piece on those. Lucas 6'8", which obviously Yeshiva could use.
Sure.
I mean, he's a big 6'8" too. He's not a skinny 6'8". He's broad. And Jackson he's much smaller. He's, let's say, 6'1", but very strong, very good defender. Played for Frank Martin last year. So like, and before that he was at Nebraska. So he's been in good company when it comes to coaches. And especially, I mean, Frank Martin is obviously known as a good defensive coach. And so he's been worked in that sense. So he's expected to contribute in that area. And also there are guys who were freshmen last year. One kid who could make a good impact, Yoav Oselka. I don't know if you remember him.
I do.
Yeah, so 6'7" Israeli, got hurt. I think second game of the year, was out for like half the year. But came off the bench and had some minutes in important situations, including in the semifinal game. Did a good job there. So there's just a lot of pieces. I know Elliot's hope is that this year the depth looks strong. Obviously, you kind of have to see how things mold together. There's definitely some level of excitement, but also an understanding that there's no more. You can't make excuses anymore. I think that starts for the most part on the defensive end. So that's been a level of focus. I know in early work that the team has been doing is like what we're doing on the defensive end is not cutting it right now. And so there has to be an extra level of buy-in in that respect.
It's I think John Baines on the show, I think his quote was, "There's no such thing as a junior with potential." Like by your junior year, you're either good or you're not. I want to talk about Zevi Samet for a second. I got to see him in person. I guess it was maybe his second career game. I can't remember how many games they played before that game at the Shirk Center, where he lit up the place. And I guess he was a true freshman at the time.
Yeah.
And he's a special player. I guess you'd call him a combo guard if you needed to give him a title, because he can handle it really well. But man, can he shoot it and just score it from everywhere. He's got such great handles and just a unique way that he can get a shot off anywhere. Again, 23 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. I think he shot 39% from 3 as a high volume shooter.
Yeah. Yes.
Where do you stack him up? I mean, obviously, we're coming off the Ryan Turell era a few years ago, so the bar is really high. But where do you stack Zevi up in terms of, the national picture of guys who play his position?
I mean, it's a good question. There are a lot of guys nationally who can play. In terms of being a pure scorer, Zevi is very much up there. I mean, he's an elite scorer. There are some issues which he's worked through with conditioning, right? We see him sometimes get tired, especially like last year, the first game against Farmingdale, everyone was hurt. And so it was just, so I think the team had like 59 points and Zevi had like 30 of them. And at the end, he was just like, he like almost fainted on the bench. So like that obviously is not ideal. And so that's something which I know he's working on. And then obviously he's working defensively and he's improved significantly since his freshman year, but there's still plenty of work to be done. But certainly in terms of his scoring ability, he is very high up nationally. Yeah, I mean, in the Yeshiva offense, for the most part, shots that are being generated are not shots off the bounce. But he has the ability to, if everything is going wrong, to create for himself.
Yeah.
Again, that's not the ideal as a team, as to what the team is trying to do. And his shooting mechanics off the catch are extremely good.
Right.
And so that's where you want to put him. but he's just very tough generally, and he's someone who can score at all three levels. And he's different though than Ryan Turell. I mean, Ryan Ryan's like a unicorn.
Right.
But he's certainly someone who should be in the picture for All-American for this year.
Yeah,
if you're looking at a preseason.
Yeah, he's unique, and that whole group. I think that whole rotation that I mentioned, they're all really good players. And you mentioned that you added some size, which I think is critical. I think just having a body in there that can defend some big guys and give you some low post touches on occasion. But it should be a pretty darn good year for the Max. I mean, I think that nucleus, if they take the step up that they should. I also wanted to ask you about Coach Steinmetz. He was hired April 28th, 2014. And
got the exact date.
I know the date. And the year before, Yeshiva had a losing record. And I think they were 5-13, although that doesn't quite add up to enough games.
Maybe,
I don't think.
Maybe in the conference they were 5-13.
Yeah,
and
I think
team they were 7-18.
7-18 and 5-13. There you go. And so they had a losing record. They had 7 losing seasons before he got there. 7 consecutive losing seasons.
Yeah.
Since Elliot got there, the Max are 174-79. They're 116-40 in the skyline. Been to the NCAA tournament multiple times. Your fans are kind of funny, man, because sometimes you'll lose a game and people will be like, "Oh my God, we got to fire the coach or something." Like, what are we talking about here?
No joke, huh?
Yeah, I mean, you guys got
some tough as you're gonna get.
So I know you're close with Elliot, so it's probably a loaded question, but man, the job he's done as the head coach of the Max Yeshiva. Talk a little bit about that, Akiva.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you can't really summarize what he's done, just in terms of transforming the program. I will say this, because I think this gets lost. Some people will question, I've heard this before. People question, oh, Elliot's only successful because of the Ryan Turell and Gabe Leifer, or Zevi Samet and Max Zackheim, or whatever it is. Like that point of his first few seasons with the guys who were there from before, firstly. And secondly, his first season with Yeshiva, he was not running motion offense. He wasn't. He was running his stuff that he had run in high school when he was coaching in the Yeshiva League, where he won multiple championships with multiple schools.
Sure.
So that first year, the team doubled the amount of wins that they had with not a significant change in personnel, and not even that significant of a change in what they were running. So there's that. Then after implementing motion, with a core recruiting class that he was able to bring in 2015, that's kind of when the tide shifted. But there's just those 2 points put together that people forget. And then I guess another point there is, part of coaching is recruiting, right? It's not just
right.
Yeah. You need the players.
Yeah, who got those guys, right?
Yeah, and he's a hell of a recruiter. So there's that aspect too. And I think in terms of being able to build a vision for the program, not being scared to put out what his vision was. I know this was a piece of when the committee which hired him was considering what to do. The fact that he was saying, "Yeah, we're gonna win championships and whatever." It's like, are you crazy? Like, we don't. This is Yeshiva. We don't do that here. What are you talking about? So it's like, is this guy legit, or is he just nuts? And the committee obviously made a pretty good gamble and went with it. But the fact that he's been able to roll with a vision to not accept mediocrity, and then obviously to sell that vision, and then the kids that he brings in and sells the vision to have success with them, he's done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, he was successful before Ryan Turell and Gabe got on the roster. And like again, the track record since he's been hired, since the 14-15 season. So yeah, I understand every fan base has funky fans. I get that. I'm sure I'm that way with some of my teams, but he has done an unbelievable job. The By the way, Akiva, what is it with why are you wearing shorts to these games in February? That's something that D3 Nation needs to know about. Like when we watch a video stream, some road game,
Yeah.
and there you are, and it's February in like New York or surrounding area, and it's probably like 12 degrees, and you're wearing shorts. Talk us through the decision point on the fashion, if you would.
Yeah. Well, I mean, firstly, now it's kind of become a thing, right? Now all poppers
It's
with the
true.
nylon shorts. But really the real reason behind it is I get very hot.
Okay, it's a
And
temperature thing.
temperature thing. If you've ever been in the Maxter Athletic Center, you know what I'm talking about
I have
also.
been.
But especially when the adrenaline is pumping, my internal body temperature goes up a lot. So I have a rule with the shorts. If it's below freezing, that I sometimes bend it to 30 degrees. If it's below 30 degrees, I do not wear shorts.
Okay, I
Um,
didn't know that. That's
not
not
trying.
bad.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get sick or anything. Then also if there's precipitation, whether that's rain or snow, whatever it is, I'm not wearing shorts either. I don't want to get my legs wet.
Okay.
But if it's a nice, cool, brisk 35 degrees, I'm heading to the gym in shorts. And then usually I got my Max Life polo shirt on, so then probably some jacket over that. And then the gloves. I got bad hands. Like my skin does not like the cold weather. So it's a cool fit. I mean, I got the shorts, the polo shirt, the winter jacket, and then like three pairs of gloves on each hand. So so I mean now it's become a thing, but that's the real reason behind it.
It's good to know there's like like a medical reason. Like it's a body temperature thing. Like
I
it's
mean, yeah, I
but
didn't. The doctor didn't tell me to do it. I made the decision myself, right? Like, when I head out, when it's 40 degrees and I'm heading out, at that point when I'm heading out, I'm cold for like the first 2 minutes. But then
you get in the gym.
then it's like yeah, I'm cool. Or even before I get to the gym, it's like it kind of gets me into the vibe of things that are going on.
And like
Like
you said, now it's a thing, but now it is a thing too that
yeah,
you
yeah,
have to
but
be aware of that like D3 fashions hashtag like people come to expect certain things. So I respect what you're
sure.
rolling with there. I'm not saying it's a bad look. I had to ask it on behalf of the QCast listeners,
Yeah,
obviously.
I got it. But
Um,
yeah, it gets the adrenaline pumping for me. I know some people have very diverse opinions on the fit. But I really don't care.
yeah,
Like
don't
in
worry what
general,
people
I don't
say,
really care what people
poppers.
think so much. So whatever. Yeah.
Let me ask you about being a voter in the D3hoops.com top 25 poll. I think you're not just one of the voters, you're one of the more outspoken voters. You're one of the more public voters, right? You put all your ballots online. You're glad to explain those to people. You're also glad to tell us when you were right, a couple months later, hey, I had Trinity. Um,
Right.
in all seriousness, though, you take it very seriously. And what goes into that? Like, how much time are you taking trying to sort through these teams and watching teams? And I know how much time I spend on it. So, talk to me about like your process.
Probably more time than I'm going to be able to put in this year. I mean, I he hasn't gotten back to me, and I doubt he's going to say, yeah, you should not do the ballot this year. But I emailed Pat a few weeks ago. I'm like, I got work. I got this Ramaz job. Like there's no way I'm going to be able to put in as much time as I was able to put in
Oh no, you're
last year.
good. You're still better than some of the
But
voters. Don't.
right.
We'll
I
cover that
figured,
on another show. I'm going to release those names. But
oh
yeah,
boy.
I don't care how much time. You're better than a few of those guys. Oh, go ahead.
You're gonna like start analyzing the ballots. Hey, why is this guy number three on your ballot when last week they weren't even there? Right.
No, you're
Um,
fine.
I do spend I mean I don't know have an exact amount of time, but I guess I'll speak for what I did last year because I can't speak to what I'm going through this year, but I can speak for what I've done in the past. Last year, if I had free time and it was a Wednesday night, I was probably watching pieces of like 10 different games. And when I'm doing this, for the most part, I mean, unless it's a game that I've circled on my calendar, which there might be like 20 of the entire year, which like get to that level of I want to watch this entire game, almost on a fan sense and not just on a voter sense. Um, I'm just watching bits and pieces. And so I'm trying to like I'd rather watch a team in two different games for 5 minutes than watch a
Sure.
team for one game for 30 minutes. So sometimes I will mess up because I'm only seeing small amounts of things. But what I'm trying to do when I'm doing this is I'm trying to figure out how good this team would be if they played some other team, which can be difficult to extrapolate.
Yeah,
Uh,
very.
it's not simple to do that. And that's, I've said this very publicly many times. I'm a big eye test guy. I'm trying to judge based on the personnel on the floor and what they're running, how that will extrapolate to other games. Um,
That always
it's
leads to Williams being ranked about 3 or 4, I think,
right,
on the average season, right? Those
right. Although I will
Williams
say,
just gets eye tested right up at the top 5, I think, Akiva. But
so
but continue.
that's what happened 2 years ago. We actually had so preseason last year. I think Williams was maybe 8. I had them 6 preseason, and then I messaged you. I think it was like the first week of December. I'm like, I am out on Williams, um, and it's just because like I test wise, I really like their personnel. I just didn't think it made sense how they were using it. Um, like they were almost trying to run a, a system which was meant offensively for guards, even though they had
Even though they're all 6'8".
well, they are all legit all 6'8" except for like Paul Proud Smith, and then they've got I thought Nate Karen was one of the best players in D3, and for the most part his touches are coming behind the arc instead of
Yeah.
inside. And he could shoot. Don't get me wrong, he could shoot. It just felt really weird to me what they were doing. And so they're like I went into the season saying, hey, I was wrong in terms of the results from what happened the previous year. I tested them. I'm like, this team has great personnel. They should be in the running for a national championship. They lost in the second round to St. Joe's by like 25 points. But like, hey, they still got all these guys returning. Let's give them another shot. And then quickly, it's like there's still something wrong with what's going on here, and like maybe the results are legit, and there's not something that the results are missing. And obviously at the end of the year they turned out to be a
They
pretty
played
decent.
well for sure at the end. They looked
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
but I think we can all agree that they weren't a top 5 team. They
Right.
weren't a national championship contender team like the eye test had kind of looked to me two
Right.
years prior. Because even with all that personnel, there still was issues with what they were doing offensively, like that just didn't fit. But yeah, there'll be definitely times I get things wrong. I like to think I'm right more than I'm wrong. If I wasn't right more than I was wrong, then I probably shouldn't be a voter. I do think I'm right more than I'm wrong. But there will be, you know, sometimes when someone's right a lot, you got to pick on them when they're wrong the 3 times they're wrong, right? So,
That's very true. I do think you're right more than you're wrong. I would concur with that. I have no problem with that statement. I think I'm going to screenshot it. I think I might tweet that about 1 million times in the next 2 years. So yeah, but you do a great job with the ballots, and it's nice that there's another public ballot out there. I think it gives the poll tons of credibility when people are willing to put their stuff out there and stand by it and give explanations. I think that gives people like a feel of that it's a very serious thing. I know all the voters. I was joking earlier about some shaky voters. There's not any shaky voters, but everyone takes it seriously. Tell me a little bit about the school itself, because I think people that haven't taken the time to learn about Yeshiva University don't understand it. There'll be some Jewish kid from Chicago that goes to Wash U, and people will be like, "Why didn't he go to Yeshiva?" Well, talk about, if you would, kind of the dual curriculum and just a little about the school so people can understand just better.
yeah. So first of all, this is on an undergraduate level that we're speaking. On a graduate level, Yeshiva has like dozens of grad schools, and there's no Jewish element whatsoever to those grad schools. And the vast majority of the students in the grad schools are not Jewish. When it comes to the undergraduate programs, there is a, a Jewish studies requirement which exists. So, like in you pretty much have to want to do that no one just goes to a, a school where you have to do several hours of Jewish studies a day
Right.
if they want to do Jewish studies. And
And
I
you
think that's
showed me
all.
the books. I don't even, I can't read the books. I open
I took
those
you,
things. I don't know what they're saying in
yeah,
there.
right, because it's a different language than English. So that would make sense.
Yeah. I was confused, man, but continue.
Right. So I think that's, by the way, the hardest sell on Elliot's part.
Sure.
So I mean, his recruiting base is obviously very limited from the outset because he's only going to be going after Jewish kids because um, the only chance you have of getting someone who would be going to the school anyways is if they're Jewish. If they're going to the undergrad programs, obviously, because again, we're the grad programs aside. So a lot of people just don't want to do that. And you know, there for the most part, the kids in yeshiva are religious kids who you know are very observant of the you know what we call Orthodox Judaism, I
What
guess. And
percent? What percent of the men's basketball players historically, the last 10 years, would you say are Orthodox? Is it like 80, 90%?
I'm not sure if it's that high. I
Okay.
know I would say that the basketball team is much more diverse in general
Okay.
than the school is when it comes to level of practicing Judaism. There are guys on the team who are would consider themselves to be extremely religious, and then there are guys on the team who legit didn't know what Shabbos was when they got to yeshiva, or they
Gotcha.
knew what it was, but they didn't actually know what was involved. So like their level of understanding, let's say, would have been the same as yours like 4 years ago, even though they were Jewish. They just
I did not know a lot,
right.
Kiva. I've come a long way.
That's what I'm saying. Like there are guys who are Jewish who don't have a religious background at all, and so uh, I'm not faulting them. It's what their upbringing was. So, but they I guess were like, yeah, I want to play basketball, and so I'm Jewish, and whatever, I'll do the Jewish studies programs. And within the Jewish studies programs, yeshiva has different levels. Um, Basically, the level of intensity of the program and who it's designed for. And so there's a program which exists, which is for guys who don't have much of a background at all, which was actually created in the 1950s for a basketball player. Um, the coach at the time, you know, the Sarachek tournament.
Yeah.
That's the high school tournament. So the coach at the time, Brad Sarachek, who the tournament is named after, recruited a Jewish kid who didn't have much of a background, and he's like, "We need a program for this kid so that he can um, learn about Judaism and play basketball for us." And so that's what they did. And so now it's a program which is growing in terms of numbers, um, and a lot of the kids on the team are in the program, and then a lot of the kids on the team are in other programs. But there's a significant diversity within the team in terms of
Right.
religious observance. Um, so there's that going on.
In terms of recruiting, Akiva, just so people kind of appreciate, a lot of times people be like, well, yeah, but they have this huge advantage because they can get every Orthodox Jewish kid in America. But like now that I've been to like a few games at like Yavna Academy in Dallas, where I was a Shabbos lunch speaker, I might add.
Yep.
That's another podcast, but that universe of kids is not big. And if you got every kid on those feeder programs, I don't know if that's the right term, but if you got every kid in those schools,
Yeah.
the best kids to go to yeshiva, I'm not sure you could be a top 25 team without getting kids from, other high schools, right? And I think Elliot, would you agree? Like Elliot's done a good job of recruiting not just the
Yeah.
Orthodox kids, but he's got a pretty wide net that he's casting. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah. I mean, with very minor exception, um, with that approach of just going after the feeder schools, which I think is a fair way to say it, kind of the schools which the yeshiva admissions department they'll fly to these schools and
Right.
talk there. So they're directly recruiting from those schools. So that's why I think feeder school is a very fair term to use. You wouldn't be a top 200 team. The only exceptions would be like it just happens to be that Ryan, Turell, and Gabe
Yeah.
Leifer both went to
Right.
feeder schools. That is it. Historically, I don't think that's ever happened.
Right.
To have two generational level Orthodox Jewish talents. When I say generational, I'm referring to within the Orthodox Jewish community. Obviously, not like Lou Gehrig or Babe Ruth, right? Within the small community, these are
Sure.
generational things.
Yeah.
Have them both be Orthodox Jewish kids from feeder schools at the same time. That is a rare occurrence. The recruiting approach for the 50 years before Elliot got there was pretty much just going after the feeder schools. So he's done a great job of expanding the pool,
That's the key. Yeah.
and that is the key when it comes to recruiting.
He's not scared to talk to anyone, really. I remember
Oh
I
no,
thought for a while, I thought Matt Laritz might go to grad school at Yeshiva. I mean, he
sure,
was talking to him. I mean,
sure.
he is good at finding kids and he's good at recruiting kids, right? I mean, that's the key to success. Is I just wanted to bring that point up that you can't just get it done with the Orthodox kids from the feeder schools,
Not at all. And also, you could have Orthodox kids in the feeder schools who don't want to go there.
right?
And even I would say this hasn't happened yet, but there are some kids who are on the recruiting radar who fit into this category. Um, there could also be kids who um, wouldn't want to go to yeshiva because it's not religious enough for them. They would want to be in an
Oh,
environment which is more focused on religious studies and doesn't have so much of a general studies component.
wow.
So I don't think that's happened before, but I know there's at least one kid who fits into that category where if he goes to college, he's going to yeshiva. But usually the case is the exact opposite of,
Right.
hey, they're Jewish, but there's like yeshiva would never have been on their radar if not for Elliot reaching out to them. But as a school, it's a religious school, and it practices religious Jewish ideals, and again, there are Jewish studies requirements which exist, and the entire school calendar and structure is all around the Jewish holidays and whatnot. Um, a very large number of the faculty are Jewish, even in the non-religious areas, and obviously in the religious areas, the entire faculty is Jewish. Um, so, uh, yeah, it's interestingly enough a very highly ranked school
Sure.
when it comes to um, the whatever the rankings, U.S. World and whatever it's called.
U.S.
So,
News and World Report, poppers.
right, exactly. um, but and that's I guess part of because of the success that the school generates in terms of the kids who go there being successful. But it's not like usually it's like, oh, I want to go to top school. Okay, here's the top like 5 schools in New York State, right? But like if you're not Jewish, then you're not going to yeshiva, so it doesn't matter if they're
Right.
number 4 in New York State. It's completely irrelevant.
Right.
It's kind of an anomaly in that sense. I mean, maybe like I don't know where BYU ranks, but kind of similar to BYU, maybe.
Yeah.
We're like, if you're not Mormon, you're not going to BYU, so it doesn't matter where it's ranked.
Someday we got to get Wheaton and Yeshiva to play a game. I don't know where, maybe the NCAA tournament, but I think that'd be cool. Just a couple more things. We're talking to Akiva Poppers, a Yeshiva grad, and a guy that fills, again, many roles here. But I got to ask you about the Illinois Wesleyan, the rivalry. Is that what we're calling it now that we're playing every few years?
No, brotherhood. It's not
It's a
rivalry.
brotherhood. It's a brotherhood, right? So I'll say that game in New York. I mean, I've never been to a game with that much energy in the building, and I know you guys had like 70% people there and everything. It seemed like I didn't see any empty bleachers, but that's another story. Well, I know you were doing your Max Live gig back in the Max Live studios, which is basically like a closet with a lot of equipment. It's very hot in there. Talk about needing to wear shorts.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, um, from your standpoint, like maybe that's because I've never been to a game there, but was that a unique environment that evening in New York City in that game? Talk a little bit about that game.
Yes. That is when you want to talk about the craziest environment. and or being a unique environment, yes. The only environments that I've been in with Yeshiva, which could match that, was the championship game that year against Manhattanville.
Yeah.
This is before my time. I think it was like 2015, maybe. Like when Yeshiva hosted a home playoff game for the first time in like 15 or 20 years, against, I think it was Purchase College. They had some 7-2 kid or something. I don't know, whatever. Anyways, so this is, I guess, before security had a handle on things. Legit, there were 50 kids standing in front of the doors, which is like a security hazard, obviously. So the gym was, I guess, like 115% capacity, if you want to talk about 70% capacity. So anyone who could fit into the gym was in the gym. But in terms of the energy before the tip, that Illinois Wesleyan game was, that'll never be matched.
Yeah, I'll never forget the outside thing. I rode
Yeah.
over on the bus with the team and getting off the bus and seeing that line and all the energy in the line. That is, I've never seen that in all the years I've been following Division III. So the fact now that somehow we survived you the next year, right? So when Zevi went crazy, he missed like the
Right.
easiest shot he took all night. He missed like a 16-foot wide open shot. Otherwise, we might lose. Thank goodness. And
Right.
now we got to come to New York next year,
Yeah.
and you could have Samet, Zakheim, Sonjeski, Bardachev, and Itkovich returning, in addition to the D1 walk-on transfer guys. We
Everyone who's
will
on
be
this school is eligible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll be losing lots of guys from a team this year that will be very good. Are you? I know you're not looking next season, but I got to think we're like a 6-point underdog next year. What are you thinking about that?
Well, I'm not projecting out for next season. I will say I did get an email in my inbox, forwarded to me from Elliot from Ron Rose, asking to make sure we were on. And I'm like, yes, we are on. Let us know whatever date works best for you. So I can confirm that that is on for 25, 26, and then subsequently 26, 27 at Sigma. But I'm not projecting a year and a half.
Yeah, I like to project. I'm already projecting that's
I know you do.
if I'm you, I'm ready to roll on that night in December of 26 or whenever that 25. Um, let's see. Anything else? Just I can't let you go without asking about Ryan Turell. Um, as a player, so he was unbelievable, obviously. I think as a person and what he did and the way he conducted himself,
Yeah.
so much on his shoulders. And then I went to a G League game here in Dallas, Frisco, and holy cow, the amount of kids that came out just to watch him. I mean, he comes on the floor in the pregame and they're screaming, Ryan, Ryan, Ryan. They have stuff for him to sign. They have his shirt on. Can you talk about like just Ryan Turell, the human being, and the impact that he's had on not just Yeshiva, but Jewish kids everywhere, all of that stuff?
Yeah. First of all, I've gotten this question several times. Like, okay, like he's great with the camera and whatever, and he's a great player, but like, is he actually like a good person or not? Unequivocally, yes. Um, this just besides just handling things with grace, just like a great kid. Not like, oh, in front of the cameras I'm great, and then behind the scenes I'm a
Right.
jerk. Not like that at all. In terms of him being a role model, that's up for the kids to figure out, who they want to be their role models. I'm sure there's some of their teachers in second grade in Jewish school probably wish that their role models were, some scholar or whatever instead of basketball player. But that's the kids' tendencies naturally. And you have two options when kids consider you to be a role model. Either you can embrace it or you can reject it. And personally, I do think the right thing to do is to embrace it, because you know there even a basketball player is not like, oh, your role model shouldn't be a basketball player, but just the concept of someone who is trying to accomplish something on behalf of other people, um, and therefore can be looked up to as someone who's like he's a representative of the community. I think there's a lot which can be said for that. Besides the fact that obviously, you get it, second graders are gonna, and not just
Right.
second graders, fourth graders, fifth graders, sixth graders, it makes sense that their role model's gonna be a basketball player. But I think outside of the basketball, just the way he handles himself makes him someone who can act as a role model. Besides for the talent aspect.
Yeah. It just to me, an incredible human being, and what he's done has been amazing. I want to thank you, Akiva, for doing this. And of course, I'm going to give you final thoughts here on the QCast. But first of all, sorry it's taken so long to get you on solo. I think it's because I had you on so many times, just in group settings. I sat down. I was like,
But you had my phone, right? You had my phone rankings, right? Last year.
yes, yeah, yeah.
I wasn't there, but you had the rankings.
Yeah, I had your phone rankings, and I kept referring to like, oh, Popper's got that Popper. So, but sorry it's taken so long. I'm glad we did this. We're going to do this again sometime. I got to thinking also about the genesis of this Illinois Wesleyan Yeshiva, the first game that got played. And, I've often referred to like that kind of started on social media with me and Elliot. Actually, I think it started with me and you, right? Because
Did it really?
I think so. I think if you really back that up a little bit, it was you and I arguing about like random random stuff.
I remember you posted once, but Platteville against Yeshiva, who would be favored? And I had a great comment. I was like, Platteville would be favored and Yeshiva would win.
I do remember that, and we would debate these things, and I think that spilled then into me getting to know Elliot. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you putting up with me. I have a photo of the first Yeshiva game, like the first stream. I have a screenshot of it.
Yes,
you're in there broadcasting. You look like 8 years old, and now you're this prominent figure.
The beard really does wonders, doesn't it?
It does. You've become a very influential, prominent figure in the D3 Hoops community, which I appreciate. You're great on the voting. You have hot takes all the time. You tell us when you're right quite often, which I appreciate. And I really do appreciate what you do for the whole community. So with that, thank you. And I'll turn it over to you for anything that you have for the QCast guest here, Akiva, on the QCast.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I like our banter is good, right? And it's all in we're not trying to fight or anything, we're just looking for the good and creating conversation. I will say this, I was at Trinity for their Elite Eight win over Calvin. And there are some guys in that Trinity locker room who are not your biggest fans, Bob.
I've heard that. I've heard that. I mean, I was slow to get on the wagon. I mean, I have to own that, and I understand. Like, I admit that.
You were their motivation. They would not have gotten to the Final Four without you.
There's
every practice, every locker room after a game, Bob Quillman, we did this for you.
Look, you can't, here's the thing. You can't try to make everyone happy. If you're doing your job and you're saying true. What you think is the case, some people in life are going to be pissed off at you. So Trinity guys, I love you. You were awesome. I was wrong. I still love you.
Right. Remember when I said that Platteville was upset alert or whatever?
Yeah, you said that Platteville was going to get beat early, and then like they should have been in the Final Four without a collapse.
It's the same idea. That's probably the exact same thing that was happening in the Platteville locker room.
Yeah, I'm sure the Platteville guys didn't like you, in fairness, right?
Not.
Like
probably not. Right. But like, I say what I think. And get some things right, get some things wrong. So it's not I don't think they hate you as a person, Bob. You are the Trinity hater. You dislike Trinity College. Probably not that, but maybe you had the wrong Trinity in your top 5, but whatever,
I went with San Antonio Trinity and not Connecticut Trinity, and I understand. So I take ownership of all of that, and I apologize to anyone that graduated from Trinity, Connecticut.
Right, and then Ben Callahan Gold transfer anyway, so you don't have to worry about him anymore.
Yeah, that's good. He was probably one of the lead guys on that charge for sure.
So yeah, but I appreciate our banter, and hopefully I'll be able to be somewhat active, at least relative to what I've been in the past this year. But whatever level of active I'm able to be, and have some mercy on me this year with with going hard on my opinions because there's definitely going to be more wrong this year than last year, just because I'm going to have less time to watch things.
Yeah, and we mentioned all the things that you're involved in, all these things. And what I didn't mention is, in our scheduling, you kind of yada yada the girlfriend thing, which I didn't, which I'm not going to ask about. I want to make sure that this is still a thing in a couple of months, but I'd like to have a separate Q cast when we're ready to talk about that. So I left it off the prep sheet today, Akiva,
Okay.
but you
Okay.
did kind of yada yada. Oh, I've got this. I got a girlfriend. I was like, records, sure, girlfriend. So good stuff.
If we get to that point, I'll be happy to do some more about it.
I'd like to have her on the show. Actually, that would be the episode that D3 Hoops Nation wants. So let's stay tuned on that. So Akiva Poppers, folks, international man of mystery. It's great to have him on the show. Follow him, please, on Twitter. What remind your handle, Poppers? What do we got at?
Hoppers Max Live.
Poppers Max Live. Follow him for hot takes throughout the year. Akiva, thank you so much. I appreciate you and look forward to chatting with you soon, my friend.
Thank you, Bob.